This episode is brought to you by Peloton. Many of us are already planning our New Year's resolutions, but let's face it, they rarely stick. Well, Peloton's got a gift for you. Get up to $200 off accessories like non-slip grip dumbbells, cycling shoes, heart rate monitors, and more with the purchase of a Peloton bike, Bike Plus, or Tread. Don't wait. Get this offer before it ends on December 25th. Visit onepeloton.com. All access membership separate. Offer ends December 25th. Cannot be combined with other offers. See additional terms at onepeloton.com.
Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Comedy Report wherever you get your podcast. You're watching on YouTube, like button, subscribe button, you know the deal. And don't forget about the live YouTube streaming show on Tuesday, 7:30 with the voice of the Commanders, Bram Weinstein. I did want to try and do one of those after the game, so I know there were some of you waiting there. We had it created, some internet issues and some other headaches with it, so decided not to do it this time. Would like to do it after the next game, but I'll give you more warning for that next time. But we will have the show on Tuesday. As you can see, I'm joined by my pal Nicki Jhabvala from the Washington Post to talk about what the hell did we see?
Game. I hate ties. Can I just say that? I don't think a game should end in a tie. But here we are. You know, it had many traits of a typical Commanders game, right? Back and forth, goes down to the wire, comes down to the final seconds, of course. Taylor Heineke rallies him back. And this one just, they ran out of time, ultimately. Took them to overtime, back and forth again. Neither team scored and stuck at 20 all.
And so what does this do? As we're taping this now, the Rams and Seahawks are in a battle here. So I don't know. By the time you hear this, you're going to know what happened in that game. But what do you think this does for them in terms of the playoffs? And does this, I mean, I guess, does it help, hurt, what?
It doesn't hurt them, but I think it puts more pressure on next game. This is the team that they're battling at the bottom of the NFC East, and the division is quite good this year. So if they want a spot, they really got to move up. It really puts more onto the second game, and luckily they have a week to rest, recover, and kind of reset here. But that's going to be in a really important game at FedEx.
Right. And now the Giants have Philadelphia next week. The Giants have not won in the division. That is a tiebreaker. But whoever wins this game owns a tiebreaker in these teams. Right. So that's kind of a big deal. So it's like, I don't know which team matters more, but they have to win that game now. Right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, this is nothing new to them. These divisional games, they always come more. Right. You gotta beat your division to go anywhere. But they're in a good spot. They're still playing consistently. They just got to clean up these little lingering mistakes. And I sound like Ron up here, but it's true. There are only a few plays that continue to cost them.
Well, and that's the thing. And that's why, but this is emblematic of every game they've played throughout, for the most part, during the streak, where it's like you're in that one, that late game stretch where it could go either way. But then you look back and a missed touchdown throw to Logan Thomas. My God, that was so wide open. But then you get Logan Thomas with 2 penalties on one drive, gives up a sack on a play, or a pressure, I think, on the play. And, it's just like those little things just kept adding up. And the penalties.
I think they had 7 for a loss of 56 yards. And then the sack and fumble at the start of the third quarter. I think that was sort of a missed block. Maybe, I hate to point blame, but it kind of looked like a missed block there by John Bates. So the ultimate, he was able to the linebacker was able to swipe the ball out of Heineke's hands, turnover, critical, really bad turnover. And that those plays have been so crucial for this team. When they win the turnover battle, they typically win,
And it's funny because when I was talking to somebody last week, they're like, they feel good about this as long as you do X, Y, and the Z was as long as the quarterback doesn't make these mistakes. And, he did in those cases, but the flip side of Heineke is that 90-yard drive.
It's that risk reward. And I know you went into that deeper this week, but that is Heineke in his essence. I mean, this game is very Heineke-y. He makes enough mistakes to get you down, but there he is in the last 2 minutes, and he's a reason really that you're back in it. And I think a lot of players love it because you can never be counted out in the final seconds, but it can also be costly at the end.
But it's funny how many throws where you can hear the audible gasp.
Oh yeah. It's you're like, oh no. he throws it and it lands into like triple coverage, and it's like, oh boy.
But that fourth down play, and it's funny because I did tweet out something about how it wasn't quite like back in 2012. Robert Griffin III had a fourth down play that any of these Redskins fans back then would know that he extended the play for like 8 seconds. Wasn't quite like that, but it was a hell of a play because he does extend the play and he's got to throw back across his body 20 yards downfield. But that's the kind of stuff that he ends up doing, that it's the yin and the yang of Taylor.
And not to make it a comparison with Carson Wentz, but that is why, even in spite of his mistakes, he's still the best quarterback for his team, because he can do those things.
You still think that you're not ready to?
Oh, heck no! Like I still think those things, definitely. I mean, when the pocket collapses, which it did multiple times, that he took so many big hits in this game. He's going to be quite sore tomorrow, but he is able to move when needed. He's able to avoid some of the major sacks, and that was such a key play, to be able to throw on the run across your body. I think that's huge.
Well, I think what we saw today too, and plus it didn't help that Tyler Larson goes out, Cosme goes out, so you lose two guys on the line. And while Schweitzer is a veteran, it's his first game back in a long time, and Nick Martin's a veteran, but it's his first time playing in a long time, that it does affect it. But I think it also shows, is this line built to protect? I'm not putting all the blame, but certainly on Carson Wentz from before, but is the line built to protect a guy like that?
Right. No, I think that's a totally fair argument. I think, this every year, I feel like this line is tested. Their depth is tested, and it's going to be no different this year. And to the credit of their coaching staff and the players, that they somehow find a way to usually hold up. We'll see if they can do it again.
It is. But again, I go back, because I do think we're going to hear this debate over the next 2 weeks, probably over the next 4 or 5 weeks, about who should be in there quarterback. And again, like, my understanding was, I kind of felt like they were going to give Taylor that one tough game, but if they had lost, maybe you look at it differently. I don't know if they don't have that last drive, you look at it differently. Right. But do you think, would there be temptation, do you think, to go to Carson at this point? And I know here's the other problem. Carson he was sick.
I was going to say, like, he hasn't even been activated yet. He hasn't played since week 6. So that in itself could be a detriment. But no, I still think Heineke's the right guy for this team. I mean, look, the players still rally behind him. It's the last final seconds, and he throws up all their back in it. The defense has a quick 3 and out. They feed off of that energy, and that, to me, is all you need right there.
And for all you Howellians out there, she is a North Carolina grad, so there is that tie. Now, for you Howellians, I did tape a little conversation with Sam on Friday, so I'm going to play that this week just to see where he's at. But we're not really talking about him. So, because really the only options for this team, whether fans want him or not, we know the only options really are those other two guys. Right. So, when you watched the Taylor's game today, though, too, are you thinking at all before that last drive, like, I wonder what's going to happen? Or did that last drive kind of remind you of why he should be in?
Yeah, both. I mean, when it gets to those final 2 minutes, I'm like, oh man, I have a lot of my game story written. How is he going to screw it up this time in the final seconds? Which he does. He's really good at that. But he keeps it entertaining. But you always think there's that chance, with him. And I think that's important for the players when they get down.
Well, he's done it many times. And I think this team, it's funny, Nicki, because look at this team with Tennessee, 2-yard line. Chicago, 1-yard line, Atlanta, 4-yard line. What was the other one they had? The Colts. They get down there too. Like, what do you think in a game like today too? What do you think that this? I mean, I know this is how the NFL is, but what do you think the result of all that is?
Like, what's the biggest takeaway from
how do you think what does it do for a team when you're constantly in those kind of, I mean, those are like, it's one thing to play close games. These are, hair turning gray, nail biting.
I mean, it ages you quickly.
Not my hair.
Yeah, no, mine's still growing in. No, they're exhausting emotionally, physically, everything. I can't imagine what it's like for Ron on the sidelines. Like, goodness. But yeah, every game is like a playoff fight, because it's, it's this constant back and forth. Every game is close, it's tight, but it's also what their identity is wrapped around at this point. So
I agree. And what about they're, to me, one of the biggest plays in the game. And I don't like to always go back to what officials call or don't call, but Ron Rivera was pretty upset about the 55-yard pass play by the Giants. It got him back in the game. And, there was look like it might be a push off.
Right.
Not called. I know he gave the officials an earful after that. How big and pivotal do you think with that play was to getting the Giants back in this?
I think it was huge. But I think there were also, again, not to sound like Ron, I think there were so many other plays that, could have helped them had they made them. I also thought, Terry, I thought that should have been a PI on the one where they threw the flag, but ultimately said there was no foul. I mean, you go back and look at that, there was contact there.
And the only thing I could think on that one, there was clearly contact. Yeah. The only thing I thought was maybe they didn't think he could get back to get the ball. That's the only way it would make sense. Yeah. I'm not even sure if that's accurate, but it's because he clearly interfered with him, right?
Yeah, I mean, especially when you think of so many close PI calls that have been called, not just against Washington, but throughout the league. I mean, that one seemed pretty
yes,
and a flag was thrown. That was the thing. It was like,
that's the one. And like I said, the only thing I could think of is maybe they felt like it was not catchable. Yeah. How do you think we were in there. The players don't seem to know how to react either. What do you think comes from this for them?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's going to come down to the film study and ultimately what can you glean from this? And, I think it's going to be a lot of, let's look at all our mistakes, figure out how we can clean these up. Because up until those final 2 minutes, this game had the makings of a loss for Washington. You could argue they did. Well, they didn't because they ended up tying, but I was going to say they did enough to win, but I don't think they did. It's going to come down to those mistakes, the small mistakes that ultimately become costly, like those missed tackles, missed blocks, the overthrown passes, a sack here, a sack there, just they add up.
On a beautiful run through the park on a pleasant day, you can easily get lost.
No. She didn't kill him.
Huh? In your true crime podcast.
It was the pool guy. So obvious.
Whatever motivates you works for us. It's all about letting your run be your run. And Brooks is here for every runner, doing the research and sweating the details to create gear that works for you. It's your run. Brooks, run happy.
This episode is brought to you by Carvana. Let's say you need a new car. Well, a new used car. Now this is my groove car. A U car. Now, what if you could seal the deal and order it to your door 100% online? Buyer's remorse? No such thing. Take a week to love it or return it. Sound good? Carvana. They'll drive you happy. Availability may vary by market. Visit Carvana.com or download the app.
The one thing is, to me, weird things always happen up here. The Gibson kickoff return is another one of those things. Like that put them in a massive hole. And it's funny because they control the ball for 8 minutes. Right. And I was joking with Michael Phillips, I don't know if we've ever seen a 35-play, 95-yard drive, but we might at this one. But that's stuff like that. And it coming after, I think, because that was after the touchdown, right? Where they went ahead after the sack fumble. I mean, it's just weird stuff happens. And that's the stuff they've been avoiding.
Right. And yeah, I mean, and that one, it's good that he recovered that because it could have led to a bigger disaster. But yeah, just little things like
margin for error.
Yeah, exactly. I remember. Sorry to shamelessly plug my Vic Fangio story, but sorry, just had to do it. It was served up to me. But
did you write one on Mando too?
I did. Have you read that one?
Did.
But Vic always had this great line that I always think of in times like this is he would always call it death by inches. They're little things, they add up quickly. And that could be for a team showing up late to meetings, or it could be a overthrown pass here or there, and they add up.
Well, I think I keep going back to the overthrown pass because that's a 4-point play, and that's the difference of the game. And I know Sly misses the long field goal. Gano missed one too. So, and I know his was a little bit longer, but still. Yeah. But 52-yarder, it's not, even though he's been really good from 50 and plus, it's not an automatic. So I'll give him some break. But what's the concern now with injuries on that line? And because we don't know, we saw Tyler Larson leaving on crutches with a brace on his leg. Did you see? I don't know. I didn't see Cosme in the locker room afterwards.
I did not see Cosme. I just saw Larson with a big brace on his leg and crutches. So, I mean, Cosme left with what they say an ankle injury and was later downgraded to out. The good news is they have a week here to rest and recover. Maybe some of them come back. Maybe there's a chance for Benjamin St. Juste to be back. He was dealing with an ankle sprain, so there's that hope. But yeah, it's a concern. I mean, every year it feels like this team just gets down to the bottom of the barrel of their centers. Jeez.
It's 2 years in a row. I'm glad you mentioned St. Juste because I forgot to write him down, but that was a huge loss today too, because Christian Holmes did a nice job last week. He did not. Now, I will say, again, if that one play is called the way Rivera wants it called, because he was in position, it's just a matter of how much did he grab and throw him.
Right.
Refs clearly said one thing, but he's in position, but then the touchdown was bad. And so like that, but that's where because
that was also a great route by Isaiah Hodgins, though. I mean, that was just, oof, yes, it was.
But it is like, but that's a route that he is that St. Juste defends well. His length and his quickness allows him to defend it well. So that was the problem. The other one we got to talk about is Chase Young, because another game where he missed, and going into the day, I know they worked him out today, but we both knew that it wasn't going to go. So where do you think we're at with him? And I mean, it's mental at this point, right? It's all upstairs.
He's medically cleared. He's been medically cleared since the day they designated him to return to practice. Doctors have signed off. It's up to the coaches to determine now if he's mentally ready to get back into the game, because you can't really replicate, this in practice, but he's got to be ready, Chase himself.
Do you think what's going to change? They're not even out there this week. I mean, he'll be out there for stuff, but what's going to change that and then makes him ready in 2 weeks? I mean, do you think? I'm starting to wonder about, are we going to see him?
I know, it's a great question. There's only 4 games left, and they're going to start him on a pitch count early, which they have to, and bring him back. So like he could play if he does return to, in week 15 when they play the Giants again, like he could be looking at like a 70 snap season.
Do you think? Do you expect to see him at this point?
I'm scared to say one way or the other. I feel like every week, there's momentum, there's hope, and no, it's very clear by Friday that he's not going to go. So, I'm too scared to say at this point.
Yeah, I was convinced a week ago on Friday.
Yeah,
I would have said, oh, for sure.
Right.
I think that it just felt like they were a lot more muted this week with him and all that. And when then when that it's just about him feeling confident, what is it going to take for him to feel that way? Another 3 weeks of practice? I don't know. And I mean, I know some people are going to say, why not just shut him down now? But I think if you can wait for him, you're going to.
Yeah. And you got $9 million in cap money tied to him, and you got to decide on his 5th-year option after the season. So, I mean, not that 70 snaps are going to sway you one way or the other, but like he's a costly investment. You want him on the field. But yeah, I think it's going to ultimately be up to Chase to kind of change that. I mean, you got to remember he's young, B, he's never really had a really major injury like this before. So it takes some experience in getting through it, but he's got to get over that hump.
And that's my concern. Like he can help them if he comes back, those 10, 15 snaps, but we don't even know what he's going to look like. But if he's right, he can help them. That's why you wait for him at this point. But I just don't know what's going to change his mind. And that's the hard part.
And it's a tough time in the year to come back, because this is when they're kind of scaling back in practice. They're trying to keep guys healthy till, through week 17. They're not going like can't go full contact, but they're not going like as hard as they would before. So to really gauge where he's at, it's difficult. He's just got to find it. He's got to find a way to get over the hump.
Yeah. And and the funny thing is, like, Montez left today with the concussion. So yeah. So like, we don't know what his status is going to be. We'll find out more. Maybe, we don't know yet. We don't know anything about it. So who knows, but they may need that.
Yeah. It's the beauty of the bye week, especially for somebody like him, hoping it's, not going.
So the other thing, last thing I really want to talk about is the receivers, because then I thought that this was a chance, play action. I think that's obvious that the Giants struggle with that, but I thought it was a good chance for Jahan to get some more action. And then Terry, but all three were that. And it's kind of a reminder of what they have.
Right. No, absolutely. I mean, and this is a tough defense to go against. Like, as Terry mentioned, like, it's a lot of man, press man, blitzing a lot. So it's a physical, tough defense. And they did well. I think Dotson, I know there was a lot of tension on his lack of production in the last few weeks, especially, given the production he had in the early going. But I think people forget that he is still a rookie. Like, And I think a lot of what he didn't do in the last few weeks was magnified because of how much he did do in the early going. I mean, he led the league in touchdowns for among rookies, right? Or so, I think he's starting to get back into a rhythm. I think they do have a really solid group there, a dynamic group too.
He had 9 targets today. He had 4 in the last 3 games combined. Yeah. But along with that, Nicki, it was 27 for 41 for Taylor. I think 27 was like, that's how many passes he threw last week. It's how many. So when you're throwing the ball more because you have to, it's going to help Dotson. But I also think he was a reminder, like he was getting open on some of those routes. He's a really good route runner, but the moves he put on after the catch is just a reminder what he can do. And I think I don't know that this passing game is going to become more dynamic. I don't think it's set up to be that way. I don't think Taylor is the guy that's going to get you there. I don't think the line's going to allow you to do it with Wentz. I have my concern about all of that. And now again, if they go back to Wentz, he's coming in with a different run game than he had, but now the line is a little bit different too. That said, you have it with those receivers though, give you a chance. That late game situation, like it's those guys are making plays.
And a lot of this is game flow, and you can't get everybody the ball all the time, especially when you're running more like they did in, the past few games or whatever. But, I think Curtis Samuel also showed at the very end of the game just how valuable he is. And his targets have been incredibly limited over the last couple of games. So if they can get him involved early, I always think he's kind of like a spark plug for the offense. I think he really gets them going. So if they could get him and Terry going early, I think that just would help them a lot.
Does this game change at all how you view the rest of the season for them?
Not really. To me, it's more of a reminder that everything is so close for them. Like I could see them surprising a lot of people, winning out in December. I could see them losing every game in December. It's so hard to know with this team. Because they can turn it around in an instant late in the fourth quarter, but they can go, more than 3 quarters of, just this back and forth, mistake after mistake.
It really
plays.
It really does, because during the 6 out of 7, I think they were like plus 6 or 7 for turnover margin. So you can't. I know they did force a fumble on Jones early, but what I say the last thing, but now I lie. But Daniel Jones though, because we saw what Mariota did to them, and my thing was like, well, Mariota, they only scored 13 points. Well, Jones's legs really hurt them today.
Daniel Jones turns into like an all-pro rusher when he faces the
quarterback.
I mean, it's unbelievable. He had 74 yards in a game in 2020, 95 in a game last year. And now today, what do you have? Like 71?
71.
It's crazy. But yeah, I agree with you. I think these mobile quarterbacks have become a problem, which is interesting because they're otherwise they're incredibly stout up front, with Daron Payne and John Allen providing that interior rush. Montez is probably one of the best edge setters I've seen in the league. So they're stout up front. It's just these quarterbacks have given them fits over the last couple of games.
And they did a good job against Barkley, except for the 2-minute situation where a lot of his yards came off draws. I mean, the linebackers are retreating to draw, but it was Jones that hurt them. And I know, like, before everybody wants to spy, there was at least one time on his 21-yard run where they did have somebody assigned to him, but over pursuit, middle left open, boom, he's 21 yards. So they're going to have to get better at defending him. And do you think that the bye week is better for Washington because they can just go back and prepare for them, whereas the Giants have to go play Philly? And
no, I think it's definitely better for Washington. I think they need a rest. A week 14 bye is just tough. It's tough. I mean, by then you're just, like their mistakes in the game, the injuries add up, and by week 14, it's hard to recover from some of the bigger ones, but they need a rest. I think it'll be good time to reset.
How about for you? You need a rest?
No, I was born for this. Let's go.
Well, I need a rest.
Yeah, I need to go. I need my bed though. Yeah, I need to go home.
Nicki, thanks for joining me, and tell people where they can follow.
At WashingtonPost.com/sports or on Twitter at Nicki Jhabvala.
There you go. Thanks, Nicki. Thank you for tuning in. And again, Tuesday night, 7:30 Eastern Time, live stream with the voice of the Commanders, Bram Weinstein. I'll talk to you next time.